Let me fix this. Oh, yo, welcome to the channel. Welcome to REXTECH, where we share the good news of the cloud. Today, we'll be kicking off a new series, walking you through the technical account manager interview process at AWS. Why? Is because when I was preparing for this interview process, after checking through some public online resources like Blind, like Glassdoor, like Levels FYI, there wasn't a lot of information on the TAM role. There wasn't a lot of information on the TAM interview process, as opposed to so much information we see online with software engineers or solutions architects. So, and then I also got a lot of questions from y'all asking about, detailed information about the interview process and how I prepared for it, what resources I used. So that's why we're kicking off this series, so I can give you all the information, because I literally just went through it. Okay, so I'm going to break it down for you and share my experience and also some tips and tricks that I use to help me succeed to get to this point. So let's begin. So first up, in this video, we'll be giving you an overview of the interview process. As far as my detailed experience, that will be for another video, right? And also the resources that I use for the technical part and for the behavioral part, that's also for another video. So today is just the structure of understanding what are the different rounds, what are the structure of the interview process. Okay, and just to preface, if I give any examples of some questions you might have in a specific round, all of this is taken from public resources on the internet. So none of this is actual questions that I got during the interview. And for each round, I will actually be ranking how tough it was out of 10, okay? And kind of just put you in a headspace of going through this process, how you should be mentally prepared for each round, okay? So the first round is the recruiter screen. This is when you get on a video meeting, call, and you speak with the recruiter, right? So this call is mainly for introductions. The recruiter will introduce him or herself, you introduce yourself, and the recruiter will also give you information of what the role is and what it entails. And this is also your chance to state how you can be a great fit for the role, how your experience matches to the job description or the job duties of the role. And this is also your chance for you to ask a bunch of questions, right? You also want to make sure that you are a good fit for the role and also for Amazon, right? So you can ask a bunch of questions of Amazon itself as a company, as a culture. And because sometimes that initial call, you can find out this role might not be the best fit for me, or so the recruiter might find out, okay, you might not be the best fit for this role. Let's try and look for another role, okay? So it's all about finding the right fit. I rank this 5 out of 10 because it's really just a conversation, right? There's no high stakes, there's no risk. It's just talking to each other, right? But it's still important because, one, you have to know your background very well. If they ask you a question about have you had experience with this, you have to be able to spit that out and say, okay, yes, I had an experience with this, blah, blah, blah. It's nothing like someone asking you questions and drilling you as you get deeper into the interview phase. It's more of just casual and wanting to know what your background is, okay? So whatever is on your resume, you have to know like the back of your hand. You have to be able to speak about it. You have to be able to talk about it. So don't go in there and they ask you a question based on your resume and you're like, I don't know. How do you not know what you've done? Okay, so that's why I put it 5 out of 10. You still have to know your background well. And as I say that, so many people don't know their background, right? And that doesn't say anything bad about you. That sometimes you have to go back, study it, look at your resume and remember the projects you've done, the experience you've done, right? That's part of the process, okay? We don't just keep all that stuff in our head. That's why we have a resume. So you can look on your resume, study it, and kind of think of talking points that you can touch on, which also aligns with the job description, okay? So ranked 5 out of 10. Next one is the online assessment. And actually, you have 7 days to complete the online assessment, okay? Once you get the link, you click it and you take a test, right? The test can last between 1 hour or 1.5 hours. It's not supposed to last too long, okay? And the test is made up of a behavioral side and a technical side, okay? The behavioral side is they will ask you like work style questions, okay? Or they might put you in a situation and they ask you, okay, how do you deal with this? One customer has asks you for something, another customer asks you for something. In that situation, you answer which one or who you would respond to, and you want to answer based off of the leadership principles, okay? Looking through the lens of the leadership principle, what is the best way to answer this question? Using the behavioral part of this test is how they gauge, are you an Amazonian? Can you fit into the culture of Amazon based off of the leadership principles? The other one is the technical. Now, the technical is, it's not extremely tough and complex. It is very fundamental stuff, but it is so fundamental to the point where if you don't brush up on those things, you would not remember, right? So questions like, which protocol uses UDP and TCP? The answer may be DNS. And if you haven't brushed up upon that, you would not remember, oh yeah, DNS uses TCP and UDP. Or they might ask you a question based off of like difference between RTO and RPO, or different migration styles, or understanding what blue-green deployment is. Now, if you don't know what any of these things is, that's cool. But before you take the online assessment, there will be different domains which you have to choose from. And based off of those domains you choose from, which are your strengths, is where you get most of your questions from. So domains like compute, domains like database, domains like networking, domains like DevOps, another domain, security. Like those are the domains that you can select and you get a lot of questions on those. So that is the online assessment. And just to let you know, it is multiple choice. So there is no, you're not meeting anyone face to face for an interview, and you're also not writing or typing sentences. I rank this at a 6 out of 10 just because it is multiple choice and you're not actually speaking to a human. So you can take your time and really answer those questions. There is no pressure on you. You just have to prepare and take the exam. I did say that for the next video, I will show you what I use to prepare. All right, so please don't ask me what did I use to prepare. The next video is coming up soon. All right, cool. So that's round 2. Now we move to round 3. If you pass the online assessment, you move on to what we call the phone screen. Now you may say we already had a phone screen, but that phone screen was with the recruiter, initial phone screen. This one is going to be with a TAM, a technical account manager, who's in a more senior role and has been working for AWS for a long time. Okay, so this person knows the role, right? Knows the job objectives and knows what is expected of someone who is working in this TAM role. All right, so now it's going to be very technical, right? You're also going to have behavioral questions, but you might only have 1 or 2 depending on how much time you have. But the technical questions, you may have like 6, 7, 8, right? These are fundamental questions. The same questions that you might get on the online assessment, they would ask that. So what's the difference between a VM and a container? You have to explain that, right? Now you may think, I know the difference between that, but when you actually are put on the spot to talk about it, that's where it kind of gets tough, or not tough, but that's where you're actually tested. Do you know this stuff that you can speak about it in a way that makes sense? Another question may be explain the 3-tier architecture, or what's the difference between a monolith and microservice architecture, right? I mean, we know these, or I'm not gonna assume you do, but those are very fundamental stuff. But if you don't think about it and speak about it and practice it, you will fumble your words. And even though you know it in your head, or you think you know it in your head, when you speak about it and you start fumbling, it's going to be taken as, oh, this person doesn't really know this stuff. And that's why you have to really practice, right? So it's going to be a lot of technical questions across many different domains, the same domains that I mentioned earlier, that broad scope, okay? So because the gist is that even though you may have a strength in security or database, you still have to know the fundamentals of this broad domains, because technology is based off of all of these, okay? You're going to be touching all of them in a fundamental way. Compute, you're always going to be touching that. Networking, you're always most likely going to be touching some sort of that. Databases, DevOps practices, DevOps methodologies, you're going to be touching that, whether it was in a customer or internally. So you have to know these are the fundamental level to be able to speak about them. And then for the behavioral, you might have questions like, tell me about a time when. So this tell me about a time when is based off of your experience. Don't talk about somebody else's experience. Don't talk about your team's experience. Talk about what you did in a specific situation and speak on that. Always talk about I, and not about we. And I put this at a 7 hard, right? Because it's only one person, okay, at a time, right? Because I'll talk to you about the final where you be more than one people, but it's 7 because it's mainly technical, which should be your strengths, and it's not a lot on the behavioral, because for me, the behavioral are actually the hardest part of this interview process. All right, so now we're moving on to final round. All right, final round, you've made it, woo! All right, okay, don't celebrate yet, because this is where I rank this one, the final 10 out of 10, just to let you know. The final round is the hardest interview I've ever done in my life, and a lot of people also say the same thing. The final round is referred to as the loop. The reason why it's called a loop is because the final round is not just one interview. It's made up of multiple interviews, usually ranging from 3 to like 7, depending on the level in which you are interviewing for. I was interviewing for L5, so I had 4 interviews. Now these interviews are back to back, 1 hour interviews with one person usually interviewing you. So if you start at 10 o'clock, the next one may be scheduled at 11, and the next one may be scheduled at 12, and the next one will be scheduled at 1. Now in between each of them, then when the next person comes, they may actually give you like a 10-minute break, ask you to go drink some water. But the reason why they call it a loop is because you go from one person to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, based off of schedule availability, okay? Now, traditionally, you're supposed to take the loop back one after each other. But during my process, I actually had the option to take it between 2 days. But I decided to do it in 1 day, which I think you should, because to get it over with, and also because scheduling becomes really crazy when you try to break it between 2 days, and also trying to take days off from your work to interview is kind of tough. For me, I had 4 interviews. You have 2 technicals and you have 2 behaviorals, okay? Now within the technicals, why do you have 2 technicals? Why not just have 1? It's because they're evaluating different things, right? One of them is called the tech breadth. Tech breadth is they are checking your knowledge on the breadth, the scope of the different domains, right? So the domains again would be compute, database, networking, security, DevOps. I mean, from the time you start the interview, they're most likely going to be like, hey, we have to touch many different parts. We just need to ask you questions, boom, boom. They might start with networking. They might ask you questions on networking. Then they might move to compute, ask you questions on compute. They might move to DevOps, ask you questions on DevOps, but they have to touch all these different areas. It's at a high level, it's not deep. It's very high level, but they have to touch many different areas. So you might see them rapid asking you questions. And the thing is, the great thing about it is once they get the answer they want, they don't try to have you spend a lot of time in that area. They just move to the next question. They're like, oh, okay, you gave me the answer that I needed. Let's move to the next question. You talk. Oh, you gave me the answer I need. Let's move to the next question. So once they get enough information, they don't stay there for you to continue talking, because that's wasting time. There's so many other areas and topics and questions they need to ask. So that's tech breadth. You're also going to get behaviorals also. Every single interview with Amazon, you also get a behavioral question. So you might get 2, right? Depending on time, right? But most of it will be technical questions. The other is tech depth, right? That's the other technical interview. Intuitively, you can think, okay, this is where they go deep and they drill into one area or couple of areas, right? Now, before the interview, you can actually say which is your areas of competence, which areas do you know more, which areas are you more confident in. Again, those areas would be compute, database, networking, DevOps, security, the whole scope, right? You can say which is your area of expertise, and then they will drill down that area, or those multiple areas, maybe 2 or 3 areas, right? They will drill down those areas. Now, this is where people start getting scared because they literally ask you questions. They keep digging into one area until they find your limit. But they're trying to understand, how deep does your knowledge get? They want to know, okay, where is your limit? And depending on your limit for a specific area, which you call to be your expertise area, that can actually be used to level you. So leveling may be, let's say you go and interview for an L5 role and you went really deep in your specific areas. They may actually give, if you get an offer, they may actually give you a higher level and say, oh, we're gonna bring you in an L6 because you have so much experience technically and you can go so deep, so you know this really well. So that may be points to evaluate you to bring you in at a higher level. Now, opposite side of that is if you don't go deep enough, they may actually bring you at a lower level of L4. So you have to go as deep as possible as you can. Now, the other thing is, whenever you reach your limit, don't keep trying to guess stuff. Like if you don't know, just say you don't know, that's your limit. We move on to the next thing. Keep going deeper and deeper until you find your limit. It can feel demoralizing because you fail at the end, but the failure is information for them to know, how deep or how much do you understand. You're not going to know everything, all right? So you're going to reach a level where you just don't know. Okay, cool. So that's the 2 technical rounds, right? Tech depth, tech breadth. All right, now we're going to move into behavioral rounds. Now for the behavioral rounds, they have one called the bar raiser round. What is the bar raiser round? Well, this is where an internal Amazonian, referred to as a bar raiser, interviews you. Okay, so what is a bar raiser? A bar raiser most likely is not on your team, does not do the same role as you or your teammates, right? They come from a completely different organization, but they went through some extra training to be able to be a bar raiser. And a bar raiser is someone who is there to evaluate and spot an Amazonian, okay? Regardless of how much technical knowledge you have, the bar raiser is there because he or she has a keen eye to be able to ask you questions, and based off of your experience, do you exhibit the leadership principles of Amazon? Are you an Amazonian, or can you be an Amazonian based off of your experience, right? So they have that super keen eye to be able to ask you questions and know off the bat, is this person a culture fit? Can they fit in the world of Amazon? Okay, now the bar raiser has such a strong power. Let's say everybody interviews you and everyone wants you on the team except the bar raiser. The bar raiser is like, I don't think this person is a good fit for Amazon. Okay, the bar raiser has the power to veto everybody else's choice. Now, they don't like to use it a lot. They don't want to be put in a position to have to use that. But this might be one of the most important interviews you have, because when you wow the bar raiser, you may not be the best fit for the role, but you might be Amazon fit or Amazon culture fit. And the bar raiser or the team might be like, okay, this person is Amazonian at heart, but this isn't the right role for them. They did not shine technically in this role. Let's see if we can move them to another role and have them interview there, because they exhibit and they display what it means to be an Amazonian based off of the experience and the stories they've told to answer our behavioral questions. How can we help bring this person in to become an Amazonian internally? All right, so you're gonna get a lot of, tell me about a time when you've this, tell me about a time when you've this, tell me about a time when you've this. You might get anywhere ranging between 3 to 5 questions, depending on how long your answers are. Okay, so prepare for that. That's behavioral. Now for the other behavioral, this is with your hiring manager, the person who you really would like to impress, because that's the person who's going to be a manager. That's the person who has maybe a great say in bringing you on his team, right? So it's going to be very behavioral. It's going to be, tell me about a time when this, and a lot of times it might be questions based off of the leadership principles of customer obsession and delivering results. Because as a manager, I want to evaluate the person who's going to join my team as someone who's going to deliver results and someone who's actually going to care about the customers, because our objective is to help the customers in whatever journey that they're on. Okay, so I hope this was enough information for you to help you with the structure of the interview process of a TAM role at AWS. The next videos I have coming soon is how I prepare for the technical rounds, and then the next video after that will be how I prepared for the behavioral rounds. And so stay tuned to that. Like, subscribe so you can get the information that you need and information that I wish I had when I was going through this process. All right. So this is REXTECH. Make sure to share the good news of the cloud. I'll see y'all later.